Welcome to PlayPianoTODAY.com. This is video number 2 of 3, taken from the opening sections of the course titled Pattern Piano and Keyboard. All right, let's put another brick in your musical foundation now. We're going to talk about something called half steps. This is very simple. A half step is any two notes that are right next to each other. Let me say that again. A half step is any two notes right next to each other. Let's take a look at the video. Now, we're going to use black and white notes here, so I'm giving you a little hint. There's a pop quiz coming up, okay? Let's start with A. Now, half step is any two notes right next to each other. I'd like you to play a note that's a half step up or to the right from A. Okay, now you're not going to go here because we figured that out in the last couple sections. The next note up is right here. So these two notes are right next to each other, right? They're as cozy as they could be. That's a half step because they're right next to each other. It's pretty simple stuff. How about a half step up from D? Here's the D. The very next note up is right here. So these two notes are a half step apart, or they are the interval of a half step. Okay? Interval means the distance between notes. Okay, how about a half step down or to the left of F? A half step down from F, the very next note is, you got it, right there. That's a half step. So if I played half steps all the way up the keyboard, sounds kind of spooky. Those are half steps, just notes that are right next to each other. Let's go on. Page 6. Now this is a kind of a natural progression from half steps. We're going to talk about whole steps. A whole step is equal to 2 half steps added together. It's pretty simple. A little simple math. A whole step is equal to 2 half steps added together. So now that you know what a half step is, remember half steps are notes that are right next to each other. Whether they're black or white, it doesn't matter. It's the distances between the notes that makes all the difference. Let's find a couple. I'd like you to play a whole step down from D. Now you know that a whole step is equal to 2 half steps added together. So in your mind you're going to say here's a half step and here's a half step. So from here to here is a whole step, right? You notice I didn't play the note in between. A whole step is right here. So when a musician will ask you, can you play a whole step down from D? And you're so nice you would. You mentally calculate, okay, here's a half step, here's another half step, boom. Okay, so a whole step is equal to 2 half steps added together. Let's look at some other whole steps that look a little different but have the exact same distance between them. How about a whole step up from E? Okay, here's a half step, here's another half step. So a whole step up from E is right there. Now here's an interesting point. This whole step looks radically different from this whole step, doesn't it? They look quite different. One's a black and a white note, and the other is 2 white notes. But I'm just kind of driving that point home. Appearances don't matter. Remember your mom told you don't judge a book by its cover? Right. It's the substance that matters. It's the distance between the notes. There's a whole step, there's a whole step. Okay, now for the trickiest one yet. How about, would you find an A flat and play a whole step up from an A flat? Okay, first you got to find an A. Let's back up and use everything we've learned. To find an A, you can either find an F and count up to an A, F, G, A, or you can find a C and count down to an A. Okay, and then to make any note flat, you go down to the very next note. So we've got an A flat, and I'm asking you to play a whole step up from A flat. Okay, so a whole step is 2 half steps added together. There's a half step, and there's another half step. Okay, so between A flat and B flat is a whole step. Again, this whole step looks radically different from the other whole steps we looked at, right? Looks different than this, different than this. But you know what? To your ears, the distance between the notes is exactly the same. Okay? We're going to go on now. We're going to take these whole steps and half steps. We're going to start building every major and minor chord on the piano. Don't get discouraged. Don't be afraid. We're going to do it quickly. You're going to learn a couple simple patterns, and you'll be able to quickly find any chord on the piano, and then we're going to get right to some music. Here we go.
This has been video section 2 of 3, taken from the opening sections of the course titled Pattern, Piano, and Keyboard. I hope you'll take a second and leave your comments. That's super helpful. Thanks for watching.